As of this year, I've been taking photos for 10 plus years now. So we'll be covering 10 years of photos in about 10 minutes. Critiquing my work over the last decade, giving tips and feedback to my past self, and discussing the overall journey. So, there's a hair. We're gonna start back in 2013. This was the year I was handed down my mom's Nikon D50, and I immediately began taking shitty photos. Like this one, or this one, or this one. I don't really want to critique much of this because I'm sure you can tell why it's a crap photo. Around this time, I was taking digital arts class, and then shortly after, a intro photography class as well in high school. The class was cool. We got to work in dark rooms, learn a bit about Photoshop, and really just they began to teach more of the basic photography knowledge. The following year, 2014, I began taking compositional photos of things. As you can see, there's absolutely nothing special about these, but I can see that I was beginning to play with composition better. You know, as far as golden spiral, rule of thirds, and also just different camera settings finally were beginning to appear in the images. Around fall of 2015, I had my senior photos taken by a Washington photographer named Matt Kennelly. I hope I'm saying that right. I might be butchering it. It might be Matt Kennelly. I don't know. I think it's Matt Kennelly. This shoot not only inspired me to want to take portraits, but also opened my eyes to what direction, skill, and authenticity can bring to photography. To this day, I still adore Matt's photography and encourage anyone and everyone to check him out. He continues to capture moments and people in a way that I feel like stands apart from the rest. That Christmas, all I wanted was my own real camera. I was fortunate enough to receive a D5500 and immediately stepped it up a notch. I began incorporating more people into images. Unfortunately, then came my over post-production stage. As you can see, the year of 2016 consisted of many images that the hues were abnormally adjusted or saturation was non-existent and white balance was far from where it should be. I took a 30-day backpacking trip that summer where I was just snapping the most photos I ever have. A lot of this trip I did not have people to necessarily take photos of, but focused back on composition and taking an ornately boring image and turning it into something a little more beautiful. My hues were returning a bit more to a normal state as well, as you can see. And then I moved into a wheat field, 5 hours from anything, to a town called Pullman. Now, I'm so thankful to have had the opportunity to go to college in the first place, don't get me wrong, and the network I did develop there for 4 years continues to positively affect the business in Ventrait. Today, that being said, living in a wheat field does not really spark creativity. So in the end of 2016, each time I came home, I was adventuring as much as possible with a camera and taking as many photos as I could plan. I was creating opportunities to take photos and planning shoots out more, and you can tell. Took a step closer to people when it came to portraits, and I took a step away for wider shots that were more thought-provoking at times. There were still photos where you can clearly see I played too much with hues, saturation, and even exposure, but at least I was taking them and learning. In summer of 2017, I realized I wanted to take this all more seriously. A buddy named Jack Casto took me out to shoot and let me use his Canon 5D, which is a camera that was a large step up from the 5500 and that I had never had the opportunity to even hold before. He took an image of me, and when I was able to see what he kind of put together from sitting in front of the camera, I immediately began saving money towards this camera. Once I purchased the camera, my photos were immediately amazing and I made loads of money. That's it. That's the end. Here we are. Just joking. No, as you can see, this clearly was not the case. In fact, it almost looks as if I took a step backwards in progress, which is interesting. Instead of spending more time initially on composition and lighting, I clearly was just spraying shots and enamored with an increase in quality or the post side of things. I think there's something to be said about this. Like, there's probably a reason that when you begin acquiring more equipment or more expensive camera gear, it takes away at times from your focus on just trying to work with what you have and increasing your skills in other areas that are oftentimes more important and overlooked. And so, yeah, I think this is kind of an example of when I made that jump to a new camera, I had this expectation that it was gonna change the game of photography for me, which it did, but it also kind of halted my progress in other areas this for a certain amount of time, I think you can see in some of these images that I just kind of feel like I took a step backwards in progress. So now I kept adventuring with friends and taking images, was seeing improvements. For these, looking back, I wish I would have just gone lighter on the edits. They look as though I was placing Instagram filters on them back then. I landed my first paid gig, and this is an image from that shoot. I have nothing bad to say about this photo or the other produced from this shoot. They are gorgeous in my mind. However, this began to lead to other paid senior sessions, and where I faltered was my consistency was not even close to there yet. Apart from over editing, over hue adjustment, and weird skin tones, I also noticed all of these are just very kind of lame when it comes to direction. I mean, subjects in the middle of all of these and similar distance from the camera. By the end of the year, I had taken more photos than ever before though, and began learning Photoshop as well. While some of these Photoshop edits are fun and minimal, others are clearly over the top and definitely kind of give cheesy vibes. In 2018, I thought I was onto something. My style of editing got very dark and over-processed look as seen here. While I like how a lot of these shots were taken, they are very dark at times and underexposed either in camera when I shot them or adjusted inappropriately in post. 2018 was the year I began growing some confidence behind the camera though. Throughout the school year, I took 3 trips that would influence this greatly. As you can see, I began to focus more on colors, light, and composition. I was maintaining natural colors better and producing work that began to look professional. To speak on this a little further, I think that, I'd started investing more time in preparation for photo shoots, and even if I wasn't planning more when we were shooting, I was looking for environments that fit the subject better or that fit the colors that they were wearing better. And yeah, I think I just was learning to have a better eye with not just the subjects or the subject in the lens, but also like what's around them and incorporating them into more than just focus portraits. In 2019, I went and studied in Barcelona for 7 months. Before going, I applied to several modeling agencies for a photographer role. I ended up landing one, was given an agent, and sent to different locations to meet different models from around the world. Although I did not receive a lot of direction and feedback on my work, this obviously provided many opportunities to shoot. As you can see, my skin tones were getting better and my use of light was just different. I began using direct light more and not being afraid of drastic shadows or harsher light. I fully recognize how fortunate I am to even have had that opportunity, and I also made serious effort to get that photo opportunity before even going though on my own. Just for background on it, I wasn't paid for anything. I was given very little guidance, so I wish that I had at least been receiving more feedback. That would have been helpful, I feel like. But in the end, it introduced me to some very, very cool people that I still maintain connection with today. And it put me in situations that I just would have never imagined. In 2020, I began scheming how I could transition out of college to pursue photo. I was making good money off grads and felt more and more confident taking them. Although between these, you can clearly see my consistency was still not there when it came to skin tones and just the overall edit. I moved back home, got a few jobs that put me in new environments like these headshots. These were the first I had ever taken on backdrop with lighting, and you can clearly tell I did not fully grasp what I was doing. They are unevenly lit, not exposing for face, and the post side absolutely tarnished people's skin. However, you can also see within months that there was progress and that I was also testing new things. Obviously not everything you test, like brushing skin, goes according to plan the first several times you do it, but at least you keep trying. By the end of 2020, Ventrait was officially a business because I finally found consistency. At this point, I felt confident enough that no matter what environment, lighting scenario, or situation I would be placed in, I would be able to execute. That being said, I continue to make mistakes and learn on a daily basis. And I think this is one of the most important parts, is that I will hopefully continue to make mistakes that provide learning routes, because if I'm not, then I feel like there's no purpose in doing this. And although my issues with like taking photos become far fewer and fewer, which is good, they should, there's still, this week for instance, I'm recording these little narrative projects, and I've mic'd people up tons of times, and mic'd this chick up, didn't do a mic check for some reason, and 30 minutes of interview just like not recorded. It was not a paid client, and I'm glad that it happened when it did and not on a paid client. I mean, there's still days where I make massive mistakes and have to learn. Thank you for tuning in. If you have, yeah, who knows? I don't know. Someday maybe somebody will watch this and get something out of it. But if not, I'll watch it someday and I will get something out of it. Leave a comment as always if you got questions or anything that might help me come up with next week's video topic. Cheers.